The mystery of the underground kingdom. Once upon a time, in a vast, magical forest, there lived a small squirrel named Spark. Her fur was a brilliant shade of red, her tail was as fluffy as a cloud, and her eyes sparkled like the stars in the night sky. Spark wasn't just the fastest squirrel in the forest, she was also the kindest, bravest, and most curious. But what made her truly unique was her incredible ability to understand the language of all animals and even the ancient trees that stood tall in the forest. Every morning, Spark would hop from branch to branch, greeting her many friends. She loved chatting with the songbirds, helping rabbits find their favorite carrots, and listening to the old oaks share their ancient stories. Spark's cheerful presence brought joy to everyone she met, and the forest seemed brighter because of her. One day, just as the first rays of sunlight peeked through the trees, a white dove named Leah came fluttering down to Spark's tree. Leah looked very worried, her feathers ruffled and her voice trembling. "Spark, something terrible has happened," Leah exclaimed. "Deep within the forest, something strange and frightening is taking place. The rivers are drying up, the trees have stopped whispering in the wind, and even the sun seems dimmer. Everyone is scared." Spark's eyes widened with concern. "Don't worry, Leah," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. "I'll figure out what's going on and make things right." Without hesitation, Spark began to prepare for her journey. She packed her small satchel with nuts for energy, a leaf to use as a map, and a tiny pebble, a glowing talisman given to her by a wise old owl. Saying goodbye to her friends, Spark set off toward the heart of the forest, where the trouble seemed to be coming from. The farther Spark ventured, the quieter the forest became. The usual chirping of birds and rustling of leaves had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence. The air grew colder and heavier, and the once vivid greenery seemed dull and lifeless. Eventually, Spark reached a vast clearing, where she saw something that took her breath away, a massive, dark hole in the ground. A chilling wind rose from its depths. What could this be? Spark whispered to herself, her tail twitching nervously. "That," a deep voice said behind her, "is the entrance to the underground kingdom." Startled, Spark turned around to see a mole named Shade. Shade was an old and wise creature who had lived in the forest for many years. His fur was grayed with age, and his eyes glimmered with knowledge. "Shade, what is happening to our forest?" Spark asked. Shade sighed heavily. "An ancient spirit called Shadow has awakened in the underground kingdom. Shadow feeds on the light and life of the forest. If we don't stop it, our home will become dark and lifeless forever." "How can I stop it?" Spark asked, her small paws clenched with determination. "You are the only one who can enter the underground kingdom," Shade said. "Your courage and kindness are the keys to defeating Shadow. But beware, Shadow will try to deceive you, showing you your deepest fears and doubts. Stay true to your heart, and you will succeed." Spark nodded, her resolve unwavering. With a deep breath, she stepped toward the dark hole and leaped into the unknown. The underground kingdom was unlike anything Spark had ever seen. The ground wasn't made of soil, but of mirrors that reflected fears and doubts. Instead of trees, there were towering crystal pillars that glowed faintly in the dim light. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, broken only by an occasional whisper that sounded like a ghostly wind. "Who dares enter my domain?" a booming voice echoed through the cavern. Spark looked up to see Shadow, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, with eyes that burned like fire. "It is I, Spark," the little squirrel said boldly, though her heart pounded in her chest. "I've come to save my forest and stop you." Shadow let out a sinister laugh. "You think you can defeat me? I am the embodiment of fear and despair. Look into the mirrors around you and see your weakness." Spark turned to the nearest mirror and saw a painful memory, the day she lost her mother. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she remembered her mother's words. "Be brave, my little star. You are stronger than you know." Wiping her tears, Spark stood tall. "You cannot scare me, Shadow. My love for the forest and my friends is stronger than any fear you can show me." Shadow roared with rage and lunged toward Spark. But the brave squirrel held up her glowing talisman. The light from the pebble grew brighter and brighter, filling the cavern with a warm, golden glow. Shadow screamed as the light pierced through the darkness, and its form began to fade. As Shadow disappeared, the underground kingdom transformed. The mirror shattered, revealing fertile ground, and the crystal pillars began to shine with vibrant colors. Spark climbed back to the surface, where she was greeted by the joyful cheers of her forest friends. The rivers flowed again, the trees whispered happily, and the sun shone brighter than ever. The animals threw a grand celebration in Spark's honor, decorating the forest with flowers and singing songs of her bravery. The celebration lasted for days. The owls told stories of Spark's journey under the moonlight, while fireflies danced in the air like twinkling stars. The rabbits prepared a feast with the finest carrots, berries, and nuts the forest had to offer. Birds composed new songs to commemorate Spark's bravery, their melodies echoing through the treetops. Spark was overwhelmed by the love and gratitude of her friends. But she didn't see herself as a hero. "I just did what anyone would do for the ones they love," she said humbly, her eyes glistening. In the days that followed, Spark continued to explore the forest, ensuring that every corner was safe and vibrant. She visited the newly healed parts of the forest and planted seeds where the ground was bare. The trees whispered their thanks, and the rivers sang as they flowed freely once more. One evening, as Spark rested under a great oak, she heard a soft voice. It was Shade, the wise mole, emerging from the shadows. "You've done something extraordinary, Spark," Shade said with a warm smile. "The forest will remember your courage for generations. But never forget, the strength you showed lies in every heart. Sometimes, all it takes is someone to light the way." Spark nodded, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. From that day forward, the little squirrel became a symbol of hope and resilience. Her story was passed down through the forest, inspiring animals young and old to face their fears and protect the beauty of their home. And so, Spark lived happily ever after, her spirit as bright and unwavering as the sun that now shone endlessly over the enchanted forest.
The end.